admirals and generals are leaving their posts from airfields, at sea, and at tactical headquarters around the world. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth summoning all U.S. general officers and admirals in command positions and senior enlisted leaders to a meeting at the U.S. Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. But even those told to attend the meeting do not know what prompted Hegseth's call and what will be discussed. The Pentagon saying only the Secretary of War will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week. President Trump was asked about the meeting, but perhaps misunderstanding the question or unaware of the Hegseth meeting, he seemed to think it was foreign generals who were coming to meet Hegseth.
Well, I know. I love it. I mean, I think it's great. Let him be friendly. Let him be friendly with the generals and admirals from all over the world. Why? Is there something? No, but is there something wrong with it?
Vice President Vance stepping in.
It's not particularly unusual that generals who report to the Secretary of War and then to the President of the United States are coming to speak with the Secretary of War.
But there has not been a meeting quite like this one, and it has created apprehension among senior officers. Last May, Hegseth ordering at least a 20% reduction in the number of four-star generals and admirals across the active duty force.
It's in keeping with President Trump's commitment to achieving peace through strength. We're going to shift resources from bloated headquarters elements to our warfighters.
The secretary has already fired at least 15 senior military officers, including General C.Q. Brown, the then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the first woman to command the Navy, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, also let go. While the topic of the meeting remains a mystery, given what President Trump and J.D. Vance said about it, it does not appear to be an urgent national security matter. But having this many senior officers away from their post does create concern among some. Rebecca?
All right, Martha, thank you.
Hello, Bobby Jones here from MeidasTouch and Valor Media Network. Later this week, Pete Hegseth has summoned all the admirals and generals of the United States military active duty force to Quantico, Virginia. Now, when this first was released to the press, many people thought that it could be a large shift in strategy, maybe a complete deconstruction and reconstruction of the Department of Defense and its military hierarchy. Maybe even in some cases, people speculated loyalty oaths must be given to these generals and admirals in order to execute President Trump's administrative goals as far as the military is concerned. But as time has gone on, we have seen or have gotten leaks that this is more of a rally, a return to a warrior ethos speech that is going to be given by Hegseth in person. And it's probably going to be a photo op too, because all of these generals and admirals who are traveling from all over the world have been told to bring their dress uniforms. Now, let's understand something. This is an extremely rare occurrence to have that much brass in one location. Heck, the United States didn't even do that in World War II. They couldn't because we're fighting an active war. And make no mistake, some of these generals and admirals will be coming from some very hot, not just combat zones, but high interest zones, having to travel all the way around the world for what many are now saying may be no more than a 30-minute speech and photo op. So why do it? What's the history behind the thought process of doing this? Well, we're going to get into that. But here's what you need to know. This is just more of what we have seen from the current administration, specifically dealing with the Department of Defense. It's theatrics over substance. To show you how much of an inconvenience this whole thing is for the flag officers of the United States military, I just need to highlight a couple of things. Again, we've already talked about how unprecedented this is. But for flag officers, and for what I mean by flag officers, one-star admirals and generals and above, so 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, for them to travel at all, to leave their theater of operational responsibility is significant because, hey, the person who's next in line has to be brought up to speed, make sure they understand what the objectives and goals are of operations in the theater. There's also the fact that, the subordinate commands that are actually doing the work now have to understand who they're supposed to report to and what, if there are any changes. And then finally, just the removal of leadership, possibly from some sensitive areas and sensitive operations, could result in miscommunication. Now, understand, This is all for maybe a 30-minute speech. So if you're on the other side of the world from Quantico, Virginia, let's say that you're in, I don't know, the Western Pacific, flying all the way around the world to get to Virginia, sit down, be in your dress uniform, and then speak or be spoken to about the warrior ethos and having to look a certain way, and then basically being berated by someone whose background we'll get into later, when you could be using that time to building international relationships, alliances, understanding complex operations, and making sure that whatever your mission is being executed to the best of the ability, all for a pep talk from the sec bro, it makes absolutely zero sense. And make no mistake, this is also in an atmosphere where the government is being slashed left and right. And the reasoning being is because of cost. How much money do you think it's going to cost to have literally hundreds of admirals and generals travel all over the world for a 30-minute speech and then turn right back around and have to go back to where they're coming from? Makes absolutely no sense. So the logistics of this, as well as the costs, make little to no sense. So why give the speech in the first place? Well, there are a few reasons why I think this speech is happening. First, let's just talk about the overall substance versus appearance thing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The current administration believes appearances mean leadership. What everything seems to be means leadership. This is why the hyperbolic phrases that President Trump and his administration uses are so consistent. The greatest ever, the biggest thing ever, never before seen, et cetera, et cetera. This is why we're getting a ballroom attached to the White House. It's all about the appearance. It's not about the substance. And so one of the things that Hegseth has been hell-bent on is shaping the force to look a certain way. Now, granted, I have no problems with physical fitness and physical standards. Those things should be met. No problem with that. However, when it comes to grooming and standards, making sure that everybody is clean shaven, this, that, and the other, and they're using the fact that African-American men who shave a lot of us have to deal with razor bumps. He's saying now you cannot get an exception to that. We're kicking you out, which helps make the military look more monochrome. When we're talking about who he wants in ideologically, well, they're going after every service member's social media. This is unprecedented. The fact that they're using Pentagon resources to look for people who may not agree with policies that have been implemented. For example, transgenders being kicked out of the military with no notice and no benefits for retirement. That's an issue. It ticked a lot of people off. And so now they're saying, well, if you don't agree with it, we could kick you out of the military. All of these things. Historically, there has never been a president that there weren't some members of the military that didn't agree with them. And they have voiced it in respectful ways, etc. That's not good enough anymore. You have to be in lockstep. So this speech with the entire military top brass being in one location will help show visually that everybody's on board and everybody's aligned with what President Trump wants to do, from changing the name to Secretary of Defense to Secretary of War and the Department of Defense to the Department of War. All of these things matter to Trump and to Hegseth because they believe in appearance. Now, that's posturing versus actual substantive policy. We're talking about a man that didn't know what ASEAN was when he was being confirmed and various other alliances the United States has. When it comes to actual policies and not grandstanding, nothing that he has done has unified the military, and nothing that he has done has strengthened ties to allies. So by giving a speech, we're seeing a distraction of what is perceived as, quote, American military strength, wrapped up in this false veneer, right? And so because the generals and admirals have no choice but to show up, they're going to show up. And they understand the power of imagery. Does that sound familiar? Have we seen that before in other organizations, governments historically? The power of the image. He's not going to say anything that these admirals and generals don't already know, but he is going to be insistent that they are there, dressed resplendent, and take a photo op to make it look like, hey, not only are they all on board, but this is where the power lies. And the other reason I think this speech is being given is very simple, because I think Pete Hegseth realizes he has a leadership crisis. The moves that he's made since becoming Secretary of Defense have not been encouraging as far as building faith and trust in his leadership ability. From Signalgate to the press conference after the B-2 bombers went into Iran, to now trying to tell media what they can and cannot say, independent, separate from the military media. And I did a video about that earlier. All of these things are eroding trust and confidence in him. I guarantee you, if the public took a poll on trust in the Secretary of Defense, it would be below 70%, below 50%. I don't think anybody, even hardcore conservatives, believe in his leadership ability. So he's trying to change the narrative. There have been rumors that he wants to run for governor of Tennessee. Well, he couldn't run for governor of Tennessee if people don't believe in his credibility. And so these public controversies that he keeps pushing into, he's trying to reset. And mind you, he's trying to reset that with an audience of people who have served combined centuries defending the United States of America. It makes no sense, but he's got to do something to pivot. And that's just hoping that's all this speech is about. It could be more. We don't know. And that leads me to my last point. The fact that he has recalled all of these generals and admirals to Virginia without giving them a real significant heads up as to why, that is truly unprecedented. As an admiral's aide, I know if my admiral was going someplace, I had to put together a whole dossier of what the subject is, what his stance or views on, how to approach each person that's sitting there. It's a real effort. It's a real manpower effort. And for these people to be recalled thousands of miles from all over the globe and not really understanding why, that also is fishy. That's very suspect. But most importantly, it shows that you do not value your generals and admirals' time. And that is a consistent theme with Hegseth since he's taken office. The question is this the start of a new way of doing business with the Department of Defense, or as they like to call it now, the Department of War? Is this more of a move to centralize everything with one person, as we've seen throughout the Trump administration and various other departments? The problem with that is, if you are a military force, you have to trust a leadership that is on the ground there. There's no way to relay everything and make informed decisions without someone who is experienced, who is there on scene. Centralizing this type of authority for something like a speech, recalling people to do something which is not cost effective or time effective, risks turning the American military top brass into hardcore politicians. There's always been that saying that to become a general or admiral, you have to be part warrior, part politician. And there's truth to that. But when we say politician, we're talking about policies. We're not talking about the classic political debates that you see on your network news. The fact that Hegseth is doing this, burning resources, time, just to have a glorified photo op, if the reports are to be believed, says that he realizes that leadership views him as less than, and he's trying to change the narrative.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.